Never bring a knife to a fight you didn't even see coming. That's what most people do when they pack for a hike. They grab a fire starter, a tactical knife, some paracord, and they feel ready. But when rescue teams look at what actually goes wrong out there, almost none of it has anything to do with fire, knives, or rope. It's a twisted ankle. It's running out of water 2 hours before the trailhead. It's getting confused at a junction on a trail they've hiked 10 times before. And by the time they realize the gear in their bag can't fix any of that, it's already too late to go back and get the right stuff. So today we're going to break down why the gear people pack and the emergencies that actually happen are two completely different things. And by the end of this, you're going to look at your own backpack differently. Let's start with the picture most people have in their head when they think about survival gear. It's knives. It's flint. It's some kind of multi-tool with 8 functions packed into a metal tube the size of your thumb. It looks tough. It looks like something out of a movie. And honestly, it feels good to own something like that. It feels like you're prepared for anything. But here's the problem. Search and rescue teams don't spend most of their time pulling people out of situations where a knife or a fire starter would have helped. They spend their time dealing with falls, with fatigue, with people who got a little too confident on a trail that looked easy on a map. One study that looked at National Park Service search and rescue data over 15 years found that hiking made up close to half of all activities that needed rescue assistance. Now, that doesn't mean hiking is secretly dangerous. Hiking is also one of the most common things people do in parks, so of course it shows up a lot. But it tells you where the real risk actually sits. It's not in some rare wilderness survival scenario. It's in the everyday act of walking on a trail. And when you look closer at what actually causes these incidents, the picture gets even clearer. In one study done in Baxter State Park, slips and falls made up about 2/3 of all injuries. Most of those injuries were to the legs and feet. And here's the detail that surprises people. Most of them happened on the way down, not on the way up. You'd think going up a mountain is the hard part, but it's coming down, when your legs are tired and your focus starts to slip, where people actually get hurt. Fatigue showed up in about 2/3 of medical emergencies in that same study. Not extreme cold, not wildlife, not getting lost in some deep forest. Just plain old tiredness, combined with a body that's already stressed and a trail that doesn't care how tired you are. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. You'd think this only happens on hard, remote trails, right? Somewhere far from civilization, off the beaten path, where you're really testing yourself. But a 10-year study out of Yosemite found that almost half of all search and rescue incidents happened while people were hiking directly on a trail, not off-trail, not lost in the backcountry, on the actual, marked, maintained trail. Extremity pain, basically injuries to arms and legs, was the #1 complaint in over half of those cases. So let that sink in for a second. The easy, popular, well-marked trail is not automatically the safe trail. People let their guard down because it feels safe. And that's exactly when small mistakes turn into real problems. This is where we need to talk about what the experts actually recommend, because it's very different from what gets marketed to us. The National Park Service has something called the 10 Essentials. It's not a product. It's not something you can buy in one box. It's a system. A list of categories that cover the things that actually keep people safe. Navigation, sun protection, extra layers for insulation, a light source, first aid supplies, a way to start a fire if you truly need one, a small repair kit, extra food, extra water, and some kind of emergency shelter. Notice what's not on that list. There's no mention of a tactical folding blade. There's no mention of a fancy multi-tool with 8 hidden features. The list is built around function, not around how cool something looks in a photo. And this is the part that really gets people. A tiny compass built into a bracelet is not the same as knowing how to navigate. A small blade folded into a keychain is not the same as having proper first aid supplies. A few feet of cord wrapped around your wrist is not the same as having actual shelter or a way to treat an injury. These small multifunction items might check a box, but checking a box is not the same as being ready for what actually happens out there. Here's a simple way to think about it. A product having 8 functions does not mean you have 8 working systems. It means you have 8 compromises squeezed into one object. A watered-down flashlight, a watered-down compass, a watered-down knife. Each piece does a little bit of something, but none of it replaces the real thing when you actually need it. Think about how that plays out in real life. Someone heads out on what they think is a simple afternoon hike. Nothing extreme, nothing risky in their mind. Maybe 3 or 4 miles, a trail they saw recommended online, good weather in the forecast. They're not thinking about emergencies because nothing about the day feels dangerous. That's actually the exact mindset that leads to trouble. because the danger was never about how extreme the trail looks. It's about whether the small stuff lines up. Enough water for the actual distance. A layer in case the temperature drops once the sun goes down. A way to see the trail if it gets dark before they expect. None of that sounds dramatic. None of it makes for an exciting product photo. But it's exactly what tends to matter when things go sideways. Let's talk about the phone in your pocket for a second, because this is something almost everyone relies on without thinking about it. Your phone can be your map. It can be your flashlight. It can be your camera. It can be how you call for help. That's incredible, honestly. But think about what happens if that one device gets wet, or the battery dies, or you simply don't have signal where you are. You don't just lose one tool. You lose 5 tools at the exact same time, because they were all coming from the same single point of failure. That's actually one of the biggest blind spots people have. It's not that phones are bad. It's that when everything depends on one device, one battery, one screen, you've built your entire safety plan on a single point that can fail all at once. Now let's talk about something that might be the most overlooked part of all of this. The most important decision you make on any hike happens before you even put your shoes on. Officials at places like Mount Rainier specifically tell visitors, even on a short hike, to carry the essentials and to tell someone where they're going and when they expect to be back. That one habit, just telling another person your plan, is one of the simplest things you can do. And it's also one of the most powerful, because it's what starts a search if something goes wrong and you don't come back on time. Think about that for a second. All the gear in the world doesn't matter if nobody knows you're missing. A trip plan costs nothing. It takes 30 seconds. And it might matter more than anything sitting in your backpack. It's easy to skip this step because it feels unnecessary. You're just going for a walk. Why would you need to tell anyone your plans for a few hours on a trail? But that thinking is exactly what turns a small problem into a much bigger one. If you get hurt, or the trail takes longer than expected, or you take a wrong turn without realizing it, the clock on getting help started doesn't begin when you get hurt. It begins when someone notices you're overdue. If nobody knows your route or your return time, that clock might not start for hours, or even longer. A text message before you leave, telling someone where you're going and when you expect to be back, is one of the few things that costs absolutely nothing and can change everything about how fast help finds you. Let's go a little deeper into what actually happens to the body when things go wrong out there, because this is where preparation really matters. The CDC describes hypothermia as a real medical emergency, something that happens when your core body temperature drops below 95 degrees. And here's the part that makes it dangerous. It doesn't just make you cold, it affects how you think and how you move. So the exact moment you need to make good decisions, your ability to think clearly starts slipping away. On the flip side, heat-related illness is just as serious. The CDC points to a body temperature around or above 104 degrees, combined with confusion or changes in mental state, as a major warning sign that needs immediate attention. This is exactly why insulation, extra layers, shade, and having enough water matter so much more than a lot of the flashy gear people focus on. Your body has limits, and when you cross those limits, the consequences aren't small. Let's bring in a real example of how big these situations can actually get. In 2024, a search in Yellowstone for a missing hiker involved more than 100 personnel. Helicopters, dog teams, ground crews, drones, all working together, covering thousands of combined miles by air and by ground. That's not meant to scare you into thinking every hike ends in disaster. Most don't. In fact, national parks report extremely low death rates compared to the huge number of people who visit every year. But that example shows you something important. Even with all of that manpower and technology, finding someone can take time, which means being able to stay warm, stay visible, and stay in one general area can matter more than almost anything else you're carrying. Here's something that might change how you think about prevention altogether. At Grand Canyon, rangers don't just wait around for rescues to happen. In one recent year, their preventive team made almost 18,000 direct actions to help visitors before things went wrong, on top of nearly 100,000 visitor contacts. Over at Joshua Tree, a similar program recorded over 13,000 moments where a ranger or volunteer stepped in and changed someone's unsafe behavior before it turned into an emergency. That tells you something huge. A lot of the most important survival work isn't happening during a rescue. It's happening before someone even gets into trouble, which means the most valuable thing you can pack isn't a product at all. It's the mindset of thinking ahead. So let's pull all of this together, because now the real answer becomes pretty clear. The problem was never that people don't own enough gear. Plenty of people who get into trouble out there are carrying a full bag of stuff. The real issue is that a lot of that stuff was chosen because it looked impressive, not because it matches what actually tends to go wrong. A blade doesn't help much if you're stuck on a trail after dark with no extra layer to keep you warm. A tiny compass doesn't help if you never learned how to read a map in the first place. A bit of cord around your wrist doesn't replace real shelter, real water, or a real way to call for help. What actually helps is choosing gear based on function. Ask yourself, does this help me navigate? Does this protect me from the sun or the cold? Does this give me light when it's dark? Does this treat an injury? Does this help me signal for help? Build around those questions, and you end up with a kit that's built for the actual problem, not for how it looks sitting on a shelf. And just as important, the decisions you make before you even leave the house matter just as much as what's in your bag. Checking the weather. Picking a route that matches your actual fitness level, not the one that looks good in photos. Telling someone your plan and when you expect to be back. These things cost nothing, and they can matter more than any single item you could ever buy. None of this means you need to throw away every piece of gear you own or that popular trails are secretly dangerous. Most hikes go completely fine. The point is simple. Preparation isn't about how much stuff you're carrying. It's about whether that stuff actually matches the problems you're most likely to run into. So next time you're packing for a hike, don't ask yourself what looks cool in your bag. Ask yourself what you'd actually need if your ankle gave out 2 miles from the trailhead, or if it got dark faster than you expected, or if you got turned around at a junction you thought you knew. That question will lead you to very different choices than the ones marketing usually pushes on you. If you want to go deeper into building a kit that actually matches real risks instead of just looking tactical, check the description below.